What's up out there, guys? It's another Friday and the aisles are freshly restocked with more 80s cult weirdness. I have a rock solid collection of films for you guys today, from power ballads to high school cliques to dystopian drive-ins. Tonight's lineup is stacked with the cult classics you either rented every weekend or walked past because the box art looked too insane. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Anthony DeJoya, and this is your home for pure 80s and 90s retro movie joy, deep cut discoveries, and just that warm, fuzzy nostalgia of the times that many of us lived through. If you love midnight movie energy, VHS era comfort food, and the kind of 80s cinema that smells like popcorn butter and questionable decisions, you're in the right aisle. This is Movies Never Say Die, and Friday Night Rentals starts now. In Dead End Drive-In, Ned Manning and Natalie McCurry pull into an Oz drive-in only to discover it's actually a prison for throwaway youth. Part detention camp, part car culture fever dream. Director Brian Trenchard Smith here serves dystopian style with synth fumes and junkyard attitude, resulting in one of the most 80s things imaginable, a movie about getting stuck at the movies. Now this one makes dystopia look like a music video you're not supposed to be watching, which is also to say that it delivers perfect midnight movie madness vibes. Dead End Drive-In strands its young lovers at a neon-soaked Australian drive-in that's secretly a concentration camp for undesirables, so it's part punk fable, part Ozploitation flex, and part media satire where junk food, junk TV, and junk politics blur into one humming frequency.
How am I supposed to get home?
You can't.
What do you mean, can't?
This was a late night cable find for me as a kid, and I dug it even though I had no idea what the hell was going on, and as an adult viewer I still enjoy it. I think it's stylish, it's sardonic, it has spikes of action that kind of feel ripped from a comic panel. It's all about the eccentric atmosphere and the vibe in this movie, and it works. You can smell the hot asphalt and feel the looming tension, and as a rental, this was that cool clerk recommendation. Not the obvious pick, but the one that sort of made you feel like you graduated to the back room of the video store where the secret movies lived. It's kind of a testament back then to just how obscure international movies could feel back in the 80s. Its pop culture imprint is super modest, but it is persistent, memorable box art, shots and vibes that randomly resurface during genre highlight reels, and concepts that feel even more timelier today than they did back when this movie was made. Dead End Drive-In's midnight credentials, I think, are platinum. I mean, it's literally about being trapped at a drive-in, watching the world pass by while the projector never sleeps. And on VHS and cable, it lived as a cult passport stamp. If it clicked for you, it clicked hard, and by the time the fence sparks and the engines roared, you were either in love or you learned that you were just not built for punk dystopia. Now, we may have escaped the drive-in, but we're keeping with the hellscape theme, and we're adding a few spin kicks to the mix for this next rental era gem. In Cyborg, Jean-Claude Van Damme spin kicks his way through a rust bucket future to protect a literal cyborg courier that's carrying humanity's hope, while Vincent Klein growls villainy from behind wraparound shades in a post-apocalyptic casserole that delivers road war scrapes, spin kicks, and more than enough revenge fuel. Now, sometimes a movie calls on art, and sometimes a movie calls for pure full-blown spectacle, and Cyborg answers that last call with post-apocalyptic mayhem, wind-blown crucifixions, and Jean-Claude Van Damme's myth-making scowl. The plot here is lean and silly, a courier with a cure, a wasteland full of cutthroats, and one hero who'd rather spin kick than explain. You get Vincent Klein's Fender as a sunglasses at night villain for the ages, and the Cannon Films grit all over this movie gives every set piece that cool scrapyard opera feel. This was such a wild departure from Bloodsport and Kickboxer for Van Damme, and my friends and I ate this movie up like spilled Reese's Pieces. Cyborg actually served pretty well at the box office, pulling in around $10 million on a sub $500,000 budget, but critics were not friendly. While action audiences were entertained, critics were savage across the board, with New York Times writer Stephen Holden writing in his review about Van Damme that going into battle, the over-muscled actor curled his lips with the pout of a model preparing for a Calvin Klein underwear ad. Brutal. Cyborg is clearly ragged in places, but it's purposeful. You get action as texture, locations as character. It's certainly messy, but somehow all of that is just kind of part of the rogue charm that this movie carries with itself. Now, as for its pop culture ripple, it was a solid part of Van Damme's ascent, the muscle memory era when covers sold weekends and kids learned they suddenly wanted to know how to kick. And as for its rental history, it was huge for sure. The video store turned Cyborg into a workhorse. Constant checkouts, constant rewinds, constant debate over whether the character names being based on musical instruments was ridiculous or maybe perfect.
What do you care about?
Fender.
And Cyborg's midnight movie vibe was undeniable as well. This was steel-toed cinema, best enjoyed when the room is quiet and you can hear the boots scraping on the gravel, and by the final showdown, you're not still watching for nuance, you're watching because the punchline is literally a punch, and sometimes that's exactly what a Friday night needs. Now, for this next movie, we're going to swap steel-toed apocalyptic showdowns for grim darkness and smoky secrets. In Angel Heart, Mickey Rourke's Gumshoe follows a missing singer case from smoky New York bars to steamy New Orleans alleys, guided or possibly haunted by a too smooth Robert De Niro. And with Lisa Bonet stirring the pot, the devil being in the details, this occult noir seeps in uneasiness and keeps the question spinning. Smoky, sweaty, and supernaturally suggestive, Angel Heart is the noir that just is able to keep its foot on the gas without breaking the speed limit. Mickey Rourke slouches through the mystery like a PI already haunted. Robert De Niro's genteel menace curls every line, while Lisa Bonet's small but sultry turn adds the exact amount of heat that the story needs. And overall, I think the craft put into this movie is lush, the production design feels lived in, and the sound design breathes life into this seedy world, and it really packs a twist that I think rewards attention. Whispers of its X-rated original did generate some controversy at the time of its release, nudging curiosity a bit. Sadly though, not enough to move the needle. Angel Heart would only pull in around $17 million on an $18 million budget, and critics were mixed, with every negative review having some positives and vice versa, such as Vincent Canby from The Times, who enjoyed the cinematography but felt Rourke's portrayal was lacking. However, like many on this list and many other movies that we talk about, VHS and cable would be where this movie would find its people, late night viewers who were eager to escape out into the darkness. And sure, its pop culture imprint was minimal, but you can see the homages to its imagery, ceiling fans as pace breakers, rain as atmosphere, and other visual cues in future cinema.
My interest in Johnny is only in finding out if he's alive or if he's dead.
And Angel Heart helped build a template for the gothic noir lane. I watched it because it had Lisa Bonet in it as a kid, then would return for the story years later. It's a slow burn for the after-hours brain where dread blooms best. In the rental era, this was the I'm feeling classy but dangerous pick, the tape you hid under a comedy when checking out, and by the end, the revelation lands like a hangover, inevitable in retrospect and totally chilling in the moment. Now, let's shake off all those chills for this next classic, because we're going to head back to high school for better or for worse. In Heathers, Winona Ryder's Veronica, once out of the pastel tyranny of her high school clique, and Christian Slater's trenchcoat rebel, offers solutions. Fiercely sardonic, quotable, and dangerously funny, this comedy is a sharpened number 2 pencil to the taint of social order, and all these years later, it's still pretty savage and still pretty iconic. Now, dark comedy doesn't get much darker or much catchier for that matter than it does with Heathers. Winona Ryder's Veronica is totally over the cafeteria pecking order, and Christian Slater offers the nuclear option with a below-the-surface smirk that you can't help but hear. The dialogue here is charged but not weaponized, the color coding is a thesis, and croquet becomes Mortal Kombat. But what really makes Heathers shine, I think, is just the razor-sharp writing, performances that balance satire with soul, and directions that just really turns high school into a war zone draped in pastels. As a Gen X sleepover staple, it was finally feeling like somebody was saying the quiet parts out loud and then put it on a killer mixtape. Now, theatrically, Heathers was considered a flop. Reviews were mixed, with most calling it mean-spirited, while some did appreciate the satire, and I will admit it was way ahead of its time in terms of subject matter, but it did detonate on VHS and cable TV, becoming the quotable cousin to horror in the midnight movie rotation. Heathers' pop culture impact would be massive. Teen movies would learn to aim lower, right into the gut, while also leaning more into high concept. I think Slater and Ryder are a perfect duo for this movie, and as a rental, it was that perfect gateway from goofy teen comedies into the sharp stuff, and by the last bell, Heathers left you laughing and a little mentally scorched, proof that sometimes the scariest monsters could actually be carrying trapper keepers. Now, so far, I think we've been torching the Colt's playbook, so for this next one, we're lighting up all the neon we can find, and we're pulling all the inspiration from every single genre at the video store. In Streets of Fire, Michael Pear's stoic hero charges into a rock and roll fable to rescue superstar singer Diane Lane from Willem Dafoe's leather-clad nightmare biker, complete with exploding signs, rain-slick streets, reflections galore, and guitar riffs. This is neon mythology with a smirk and a perfect way to close out the night's marathon. Walter Hill calls this a rock and roll fable, and you know what? He's not wrong. That's exactly how Streets of Fire plays. It's mythic, stylized, and poured over neon on an ever-wet backlot, while the soundtrack swings from power anthems to high-power ballads. I mean, we all loved this movie as kids, even if we didn't have any idea what was going on, but it was total spectacle and we ate it up. It's a pure vibe that only few 80s movies can brag about being able to deliver. You get razor clean compositions, knockout musical set pieces, and dialogue that feels overinflated and melodramatic in all the best ways. This was one of those movies that just made you want to go out and buy a leather jacket and throw a fistful of gel in your hair and just casually walk to the perfectly timed bursts of sparks. Theatrically, this movie did stumble pretty bad and it wasn't very well reviewed. Janet Maslin with the New York Times called it an exhausting exercise in thrill-seeking, but Streets of Fire would gain a legendary afterlife in living rooms for years to come, where VHS and cable turned it into the final song for many a Friday night movie marathons, giving Streets of Fire a pop culture imprint that ran as deep as the Grand Canyon. Music videos, fashion shoots, glorious montages, and Willem frickin' Dafoe, not forgetting Diane Lane, Bill Paxton, Robert Townsend, Rick Moranis, and more, who all chime in as well. Now, as a midnight movie, it's the perfect closer. Big feelings, bigger choruses, drama, spectacle, action, and a sense of that last train home romance. This was that perennial staff pick, the one that said to rent me if you liked the Warriors, and by the time the last guitar rang, you weren't just entertained, you had just been baptized in neon and instant 80s nostalgia, having seen a thriller, a musical, a drama, an action movie, and an offbeat comedy, all in a sausage skin tight 93 minutes. And that's a wrap on tonight's rental haul, guys. If this lineup of 80s cult classics hit that sweet spot of nostalgia, neon, and just the right amount of weird, then I think you guys are definitely going to vibe with the 90s deep cuts I have over on the VHS Vault series. You can check one of those episodes out right over here for a ton of forgotten 90s gems as well. And definitely drop your favorite 80s cult movies down in the comments, your midnight movie memories. What tapes did you rent? What did you tape off cable? Which VHS tape did you bootleg using 2 VCRs? Let me know all your stories down in the comments. And if you enjoyed the vibe tonight, hit like, subscribe, ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next lineup of movies. I'm going to keep the shelf filled with plenty of VHS era oddities, neon soaked favorites, wild adventures, and the kind of cult cinema finds that just keep the video store spirit alive. So until the next time, let's keep the nostalgia spinning, let's keep the stories rolling, and remember, movies never say die.
Jack Burton and the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Survive a war, you gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?